As to the inner word and the perception thereof, I can only speak of myself, and say that I always perceive the most holy word of our Lord in the realm of my heart as a thought of utmost clarity, radiant and pure as words that are spoken. No matter how close to me, no other person is able to hear even the faintest whisper of a voice. Yet for me, this voice of grace rings more clearly than the loudest tones of this material world. And this indeed is all that I can tell you of my experience. And had you not the whole universe within you, the heavens would be without stars in your eyes. And had you not the spiritual kingdom of heaven within you, and life eternal from the Lord, then indeed you would not be able either to contemplate or to speak of these things. He who assumes that he lives only through a limited time errs most grievously. For in man, you will find nothing that is transient and limited. There is only that which shifts and changes as the spirit unfolds. And thus it is indeed possible that man may well comprehend that which is infinite and eternal, time, space, power, light, and life. For all of these are within him.
These words were written in the mid-19th century by a man who cannot be regarded as a writer or poet of that age, although he bequeathed a truly immense work to posterity. A work now comprising almost 12,000 printed pages, yet which was not written in the usual sense of the word. And had you not the whole universe within you?
You cannot enter into a heaven anywhere, for you yourself must create your own heaven. The seed of the kingdom of heaven is the Word of God.
Who was this Jakob Lorber? What caused this man to write, although he was not a writer by profession, and this over a period of 24 years? His biographer, Karl Gottfried Ritter von Leitner, a man of great experience and insight, describes him as follows. The most remarkable man I have ever met in the whole of my long life is Jakob Lorber, a theosophist who deserves to join the ranks of the most illustrious men of this discipline.
There are those who now regard him as a peer of Jakob Böhme and Emanuel Swedenborg. At that time, however, this Jakob Lorber did not immediately attract particular attention.
The world desires to give me nothing, and I am glad of this, for thus I know that I am the lowest and only receive and have everything from one being. Not until man has descended to the very lowest level in all outer interests of his heart will he be able to enter my kingdom, says the Lord, for I myself have selected the lowest.
Theosophist, unknown prophet, seer, mystic, or simply God's scribe, as he called himself in true modesty. Let us take a look at this Jakob Lorber, this strange personality whose life's work and achievement stand like a mighty rock in the landscape of our age.
Jakob Lorber was born on July 22, 1800 in Kanisha, a tiny settlement on the banks of the Drave, now part of Yugoslavia. His parents have a small farm known as the Bergholdengrunde. Jakob, the eldest of 4 children, is encouraged by his father to develop his musical talent. The father himself is an excellent performer on the cimbal, an instrument similar to the dulcimer. He's also the musical director of the Schwarzenbacher folk group in the Austrian province of Styria. As a conductor, Lorber's father acquires both a name for himself and an additional source of income. At school in Jaring, now called Jarenina, Jakob is initially fascinated by the harp and goes on to study piano, organ, and violin. At the age of 17, Jakob leaves the rural idyll of his parents' home. In the nearby city of Marburg, now called Maribor, he begins training to become a secondary school teacher. He is evidently attracted to the teaching profession and wishes to acquire proper training. After passing his exam, he becomes a teacher at St. John's in Zagatal. The chaplain of the parsonage here encourages the young and devout Jakob Lorber to become a priest, and to this end, he advises him to continue studying in Marburg. After 5 more years in Marburg, where he also continued his musical development as a church organist, he then moves on to the city of Graz.
Here Jakob Lorber takes up a position as a private teacher in a family, so that he can earn a living. He taught, to my utmost satisfaction, the most diverse subjects such as reading, writing, arithmetic, and indeed all German school subjects. Then also drawing and music, whereby in the 2 aforementioned art forms, Lorber had attained a high degree of perfection.
Finally, he completes his studies to become a secondary school teacher, and upon graduation, applies for a position in a school. His endeavors in this respect are not immediately successful, and so he abruptly abandons his plans to join the teaching profession. Karl Gottfried Ritter von Leitner describes this phase of Lorber's life.
He then devoted himself completely to music, gave singing lessons, also in playing the piano and the violin, and composed his own songs and concert music. During this period, he made the acquaintance of the famous composer Anselm Hüttenbrenner, who lived in Graz, where he owned an estate, and was also at that time director of the Styrian Music Association. Hüttenbrenner gave Lorber the opportunity of giving violin concerts for the association. The encounter with Niccolò Paganini in the following years is of decisive importance. Lorber hears this unique violin virtuoso in Vienna in 1828, makes his acquaintance, and even takes lessons from him. Paganini comes to personify his musical ideal, and to an even greater extent, Jakob Lorber gains access to the world of music and its artists.
Graz is already at this time a fascinating city full of life and vitality. Jakob Lorber enjoys his life here as an artist. The social circle revolving around the composer Anselm Hüttenbrenner, who is also a friend of Franz Schubert, not only inspires and encourages Lorber, but they also become his patrons.
In this period, Lorber regarded the development of his musical aspirations as his main task. And yet, this did not entirely satisfy the needs of his innermost self. He also cultivated a great interest in astronomy. Admittedly, he lacked the thorough knowledge of mathematics necessary to pursue this discipline in a scientific manner. Yet, his intense desire to attain a higher awareness had always lured him irresistibly into the mysterious depths of the star-spangled heavens. As his desire to penetrate the splendid sphere of material creation asserted itself in this way, an irresistible urge also developed gradually within him, an urge to find access to the secret treasures of the spiritual world.
Jakob Lorber is approaching his 40th birthday when he is offered the post of musical director in Trieste. The work conditions are favorable, yet for Lorber, the decision to leave the city of Graz, which has become his second home, is not an easy one. However, the prospect of a permanent position, complete with financial security, finally convinces him to accept the post. He makes preparations for his departure.
Yet now something happens which will change Jakob Lorber's life, which will lead him down a new path. It is an event which takes place in silence and tranquility. An event which the biographer Ritter von Leitner, well known for his sober, objective approach, relates as follows.
It
was 6 o'clock in the morning of the 15th of March, 1840, as he later told his friends. He had just said his morning prayers and was about to leave his bed when in the left side of his breast, where the heart is, he clearly heard a voice which said to him,
Arise, take your pen and write.
He immediately obeyed this mysterious call, took his quill and wrote down that which was spoken within him, word for word. And this was the beginning of the work, the keeping of God's house.
Thus speaks the Lord to every man, and it is true and right and indisputable. He who desires to talk to me shall come to me, and I shall place the answer in his heart. Yet only the pure whose hearts are meek shall hear the sound of my voice. And he who loves me more than all the world, who loves me as a tender bride her groom, with him shall I wander arm in arm. At all times he will regard me as one brother to another, as I regarded him from eternity, even before he existed.
Lorber lehnte nach diesem Ereignis.
After this event, Lorber immediately rejected the post offered to him, and from this very hour he placed himself at the service of these mysterious whispered messages. For the next 24 years until his death, he was a diligent scribe, humbly referring to himself as a servant of the Lord. From these mysterious whispered messages, as Lorber's biographer Ritter von Leitner calls them, there emerged over the years a monumental work of universal complexity. It comprises the three basic themes of all being: the nature of God, the universe, and of man. It is unique, new, incomparable. It reveals and expounds a meaningful system of the world in which everything is connected and which, above all, finally releases religion and science from their strictly confined isolation and unites them.
Insight, facts, truth. Lorber receives this world in all of its diversity and unraveled complexity, ranging from the origin of creation up to its completion in the future. It casts light upon the state of this world and of the next. Is Jakob Lorber simply the theosophist, the philosopher, or the mystic? No, he is exactly what he calls himself, God's scribe. Yet, what does this mean?
In a letter dated the 11th of November 1766 to the prelate Oettinger, the mystic and seer Emanuel Swedenborg predicted that he would soon be followed by a man who would receive a verbal illumination. He specifically pointed out that this voice would not be heard outside the inspired one, but would be perceived within him. There are certain indications that he was referring to Jakob Lorber. Or could, after all, the divine message announced by Swedenborg only be the work of a man of letters, of an all-round genius? The late authoress Edith Michaelitis was an expert on Lorber and his work.
One would have to speak in superlatives in order to explain who Lorber really was. If one regards him as a man of letters, then he surpasses all writers, poets, and thinkers of all ages. For where can one find a more comprehensive wisdom, a deeper interpretation, a more exact knowledge of customs, circumstances, geographical, historical, and biological factors than in his writings? If one regards him, however, as a genius of the medium, then he transcends all the initiated known to us. There is not yet a word for him, a word which could truly describe him. And when he calls himself God's scribe, then he does so out of the humility of his self-appreciation. Yet we know that he was not a mere tool, but an astounding and incomprehensible human spirit.
Lorber does not fall into ecstatic trances, which at that time would not have been regarded as unfitting. In fact, he is surprised himself at what is happening to him, or rather what is taking place within him, and is sometimes overcome by awe and amazement on reading what he himself has written.
You would think that water is the mother of creatures. Yet it is not so. The first class of the animal world are the infinitesimally tiny inhabitants of the ether. They approximate that which you call atoms in your language. Should you wish to discover these little animals with your own eyes, then you must be able to enlarge them 1,000,000,000,000 times. And this you will never be able to do in your earthly life. A mortal eye will never be able to regard the things in their truth. This only the eye of the Spirit can do. And yet I say unto you, that every man has within him that which is infinite and eternal, just like the space which surrounds him eternally. And this he has within every fiber of his material body, not to mention his soul, and most particularly his spirit. Have you ever discovered the borderline to which an awakened soul can elevate its thoughts? Yet, if it is so that the soul already has an infinite realm of thought, then why should we even begin to speak of the eternal, divine spirit within it, which is in itself the power, the light, and life itself? Yet, it is quite a different matter to perceive the secret inner word that comes from my heart into the heart of those who perceive it within themselves. And for this there must be a certain lineage of man who is prepared, whose innermost being is capable of sustaining the omnipotence and dominion of my word. For a mere iota coming directly from me would destroy and kill any man who was not prepared. Yet, if it has once been written down, then let those who are of a strong will and a sound mind read it. Not only will it not kill them, it will endow them with the strength and courage for eternal life.
Jakob Lorber wrote, as has been testified, without pausing to think and without correcting even one line of the meaning of his writings. Can this modest, sometimes convivial musician and composer really be regarded as having been selected for a divine message? His friends and contemporaries also had to overcome their initial doubts and misgivings. Lorber wrote almost every day for years, and his writings were truly dynamic, revolutionizing the contemporary view of the world. Yet could this not be the product of his own imagination, or even of a state of schizophrenia? Anselm Hüttenbrenner, the aforementioned composer and friend of Schubert's, together with his brother Andreas, at that time mayor of Graz, did not hesitate to summon well-known physicians to establish the state of Lorber's mental and physical health. Yet even a certain Dr. Justinus Kerner, doctor and poet, had to admit Lorber's writings were not the product of an overwrought mind or of an aberrant imagination. They were the fruits of a wonderful and mysterious power and inspiration.
Of course, Lorber sensed the spirit of a new age which proudly presented inventions and discoveries under the banner of progress. The spirit of the Enlightenment inspired new thoughts and also pervaded contemporary religion. Ecclesiastical authority and rigid dogmas were questioned. More and more sectarian groups emerged, while free spirits converted to atheism. One could say that the time had come to combine a profound religious creed with a spiritually inspired form of science in order to gain new insight into the nature of being. And it is in the work of Jakob Lorber that faith and knowledge form an inseparable unity, that human thought is reunited with the eternal and divine consciousness of the Spirit.
Thus, if man attains true knowledge, then this shall certainly guide his will, as a good rider does his horse. And the will shall then evermore desire that which his knowledge deems to be true, good, and thus expedient. And so will and knowledge shall be constant companions until they finally unite and become one, which results in the perfection of man. The will is the life of the soul, whereas the act of knowing is embedded in the eternally free spirit. When spirit and soul become one, then this spiritual rebirth creates the freedom which is a condition for eternal life. And then man lives in my kingdom, for that is the truth and the life eternal.
Jakob Lorber began his writings with an account of the origins of mankind, entitled The Keeping of God's House. This describes the nature of God, the formation of the universe, the creation of the human race, and the primeval history of mankind up to the great catastrophe of anterior Asia, the flood, These topics, which are presented in the Old Testament in a very compressed form, are dealt with in great detail in this 3-volume work. The biblical story of creation is expounded in depth by means of analogies. The writing of the basic work takes over 4 years and is not completed until September 1844. In the following years, more works on the creation and on natural science were taken down by Lorber's pen. He describes in most subtle detail a great deal of phenomena from the realms of natural science. Findings on the Earth, the Moon, the Sun, Saturn, all of which were completely unknown at the time. These findings are being gradually confirmed by the results of modern scientific research. Lorber's prophetic view also includes the conditions of our day and age. He foresaw the technical achievements of our advanced civilization, which threatens to become increasingly one-sided, accompanied as it is by the erosion of spiritual culture. Lorber looked into the future and saw the plundering of nature by an unseeing mankind, the use of nuclear power and radioactive contamination. He predicted worldwide economic crises with unemployment, catastrophes on an international scale, wars. It is equally amazing that Jakob Lorber spoke of the divisibility of the atom as early as 1847, and even described this with utmost precision as a micro-universe. This was 64 years before science, in the person of Rutherford, discovered this phenomenon, and 108 years before the discovery of Eta Meson and the Sigma baryon, he determined their exact duration of life down to a trillionth of a second.
Lorber himself would never have dared to interpret the tremendous astronomical and mathematical, chemical and biological laws as they were dictated to him.
See the time, how it presses for a solution. See now how all that is noble in the world withers. Know that the time is nigh when men shall reap what they have sown. See the stream of light which begins to pervade your world. Hear the voices in the world of spirits, which beat upon your ears like great waves of sound. These are the warning words of a loving Father.
The living experience of God is a basic experience of all great mystics. The inner word refers to that mystical process in man which is aroused by divine inspiration. Bernhard von Clairvaux says of this, "It would be difficult to close one's ears in order not to hear. The voice comes of its own accord, demands attention, and beats incessantly upon the door of the heart." There were others too who perceived this voice. Meister Eckhart, the great preacher of the Middle Ages, Francis of Assisi, Jakob Böhme, and Emanuel Swedenborg, also the noted abbess Hildegard von Bingen.
My innermost self was shaken by this face, and the feelings of my body were extinguished, for my power of perception was transformed in a completely different way, as if I did not know myself anymore. And God's inspiration trickled down into my consciousness like soft drops of rain.
For 24 years, Jakob Lorber received within himself the message of God. In these 24 years, his writings expanded into a legacy of immeasurable proportions. The musician from Little Canicia led a life of fulfillment, yet now his strength was waning.
Deo gratias.
He felt his end approaching, and inwardly strengthened, he prepared himself for his transition from this world into the beyond, for life after death.
Am Morgen darauf fand man ihn.
The next morning, he was found lying in bed, fully clothed, his face turned to the wall, and the bedding spattered with blood. The physician was summoned, and he administered a medicine, yet he declared that human aid would be of no avail. Meanwhile, his friends hurried through the pouring rain to his house. He lay there for some time in pain. Then suddenly, like a soldier, straightening to attention, he stretched vigorously, lay flat on his back, and with his face turned towards the rising sun, amidst the turmoil of nature, while thunder and lightning roared and raged, he became perfectly still. He was now in the throes of death, and after some 15 minutes, God's scribe had passed away peacefully, and his spirit, which had long since dwelt in a more exalted world, returned to its eternal home. He was buried in the cemetery of St. Leonard near Graz. The many mourners attended the funeral of the well-known violin virtuoso and composer, rather than that of Jakob Lorber, theosophist, yet to be acclaimed in his true greatness. The profound doctrine of life and creation, which Jakob Lorber has made accessible and comprehensible to us, leads the faithful into a cosmic world, brings together this world and the next, praises the love of God which pervades all creation, and shows us the way to the sanctuary of God's omnipotence. Man's yearning for love, peace, and freedom shall be fulfilled, for the spiritual evolution predicted by Lorber is taking place, is growing here and now. Anyone who studies Jakob Lorber's work will ascertain that there is no place whatsoever for rigid, dogmatic thought.
For in man you will find nothing that is transient and limited. There is only that which shifts and changes as the spirit unfolds. And thus it is indeed possible that man may well comprehend that which is infinite and eternal, time, space, power, light, and life. For all these are within him.